After 10 years of praying, crying, and waiting, I finally held my miracle in my arms. My son Silas was the answer to every tear I had shed through a decade of infertility. For 12 months, I breathed for him, lived for him, and thanked God every night for trusting me with his little life. Then one morning, without warning, he was gone. The world I had fought so hard to build collapsed in a single heartbeat. At Silas's memorial, I stood in front of his tiny framed photograph, numb from grief. My family and friends filled the room, but all I felt was silence pressing down on me. Then I heard a whisper. My mother-in-law, Adra, leaned close to her daughter Nyla and said, "God took him back before she could ruin him." Her voice wasn't filled with sympathy. It carried satisfaction, as though she had been waiting for this moment. Nyla nodded, eyes down, complicit in her mother's cruelty. My husband, Corin, stood beside me but lowered his head, as if he agreed with them or was too weak to defend me. The words cut deeper than any knife. I wanted to scream, but the weight of loss kept my voice trapped inside. As I tried to steady myself, I felt a tug at my dress. I looked down and saw my 7-year-old niece, Illyra, staring up at me with wide, frightened eyes. In a whisper only I could hear, she asked, "Auntie, should I show the pastor what Grandma poured into baby Silas's bottle?" The air in the room shifted instantly. My heart stopped. Every conversation fell silent as gasps rose from the crowd. Eyes turned toward us. Illyra clutched my dress tighter, waiting for me to answer. In that single moment, my grief was overtaken by a new kind of fear, one that demanded the truth. I was 28 when I married Corin. We were young, in love, and certain that the life we dreamed of was waiting for us just around the corner. I imagined a home filled with laughter, toys scattered on the floor, and bedtime stories whispered in the dark. Corin wanted the same. We never doubted that children would come quickly, because why wouldn't they? We were healthy, hopeful, and ready. But year after year passed, and the silence of our home became heavier than any argument we could ever have. I watched my friends carry babies on their hips while I carried disappointment in my chest. Every birthday candle I blew out, every prayer I whispered, every tear I wiped onto my pillow was for one thing: a child of my own. Doctors told us to be patient, at first. Then they told us to be realistic. I refused to believe God would give me a barren life. Corin tried to be strong for both of us, but I could see the strain in his eyes every time another test came back negative. My in-laws were not kind during those years. Adra, my mother-in-law, would remind me in quiet, sharp tones that a wife's duty was to bear children. "A tree that doesn't bear fruit is cut down," she told me once, while handing me a plate at the dinner table. Her words stung, but Corin never corrected her. Nyla, my sister-in-law, followed her mother's lead, whispering with her in corners of the house whenever I entered. They made me feel like an intruder in the family I'd married into. Still, I clung to hope. I prayed harder, fasted longer, and begged God to remember me. And then, 10 years into our marriage, something miraculous happened. I found out I was pregnant. I remember the morning I told Corin. The sun had just risen, spilling light across our kitchen table. I placed the test in front of him, my hands trembling so much I could barely keep it steady. He stared at it, then at me, and when he finally realized what it meant, he cried harder than I had ever seen. He pulled me into his arms and whispered, "Mara, God heard us." From that day on, I lived for the child inside me. I sang to him before he was born. I prayed over him every night. I imagined the day I would finally hold him and look into his eyes. The months of pregnancy were not easy. Nausea, fatigue, and constant worry shadowed me, but every symptom felt like a gift after 10 empty years. When Silas finally arrived, the world around me changed. His first cry filled the room like a hymn. His tiny fingers wrapped around mine, and I felt like my soul had been completed. "He's ours," I whispered to Corin as tears ran down my cheeks. Corin kissed my forehead and said, "He's our gift. Our miracle." For the first time in years, I felt peace. I cherished every moment with Silas. The late-night feedings, the first time he smiled, the way his laughter filled our small house. Even his cries were music to me. My days revolved around him, and I was grateful for every second. But Audra never stopped her biting comments. She would visit uninvited, hovering as I fed Silas. She criticized the way I held him, the way I dressed him, even the way I sang to him. "A mother's voice should bring calm, not strain his ears," she said once, frowning as I hummed a lullaby. She believed my prayers had been answered not because of my faith, but because of hers. "You should thank me, Mara." "I interceded when you were too weak," Nyla followed suit, echoing her mother's words. "They treated me as though Silas was more theirs than mine, as if I had borrowed him from them." Corin noticed but avoided confrontation. Whenever I brought it up, he would sigh and say, "They don't mean harm. Just let it go." His silence cut deeper than Adra's words, because it meant I was alone in defending my role as Silas's mother. Still, I refused to let their bitterness steal my joy. Silas was mine, and I would love him fiercely. I memorized every detail of him: the soft curl of his hair, the tiny dimples that appeared when he smiled, the way he reached for me whenever he was frightened. I promised myself that nothing would ever hurt him. The first year of his life was the happiest I had ever known. I celebrated every milestone as if it were a miracle, because to me, it was. His first word, his first step, the first time he called me Mama. Each moment was proof that the waiting had been worth it. But beneath the surface, tension brewed. Adra's watchful eyes seemed to follow me everywhere. Sometimes I caught her standing over Silas's crib longer than necessary, murmuring prayers I couldn't quite hear. I wanted to believe she loved him, but her words often carried a sharpness that unsettled me. One afternoon, as I prepared Silas's bottle, she walked into the kitchen and said, "Some women are not made to be mothers, Mara. Pray you don't ruin him." I forced a smile, but inside fear began to take root. I told myself she was only cruel, not dangerous. I told myself Corin would protect us if anything was wrong. I told myself God would never let harm come to the child he had finally given me. I had no way of knowing how wrong I was. The morning Silas died began like any other. He'd been a little fussy the night before, but nothing unusual. I remember rocking him in the nursery, his soft breath against my shoulder, his tiny hand clutching my shirt. I whispered prayers over him as I always did, asking God to protect him through the night. When I finally laid him down, he smiled in his sleep, and I kissed his forehead, never imagining it would be the last time. When dawn came, I woke to silence. Normally, Silas's cry was the first sound of my day, calling me to his side. But that morning, the house was still. I hurried to his crib, expecting to find him stirring, but his chest did not rise. His skin was pale, his lips tinged with blue. I shook him gently, then harder, panic flooding my veins. I screamed for Corin, who rushed in, his face turning white as he realized what I already knew. We called for help, but it was too late. My baby, the miracle I had waited 10 years to hold, was gone in a single night. No illness, no warning, no explanation that could soothe the agony ripping through me. The doctors gave me words like sudden and unexplained, but none of it mattered. All I heard was silence, the kind that settles over a house when laughter has been stolen from it. Grief consumed me. I could not eat, could not sleep, could not breathe without feeling the crushing weight of his absence. Every corner of the house reminded me of him. His toys still lay on the floor where he left them. His crib still smelled of baby lotion and warm blankets. I sat for hours holding the little blanket he loved, rocking back and forth in the empty nursery, whispering, "Come back to me." Corin grieved too, but differently. He buried himself in work, returning home each evening with eyes that looked through me rather than at me. We spoke less with every passing day. When we did, our words were heavy with blame neither of us dared voice. He looked at me as if searching for answers, and I looked at him, desperate for comfort he could not give. And then there was Adra. Instead of offering support, she sharpened her cruelty. At the memorial service, while I stood barely able to hold myself upright, she leaned toward Nyla and said, loud enough for me to hear, "God took him," back before she could ruin him. Her voice was calm, certain, as if she had known all along that my motherhood was doomed. I froze. My heart, already shattered, broke in a new way. I turned to Corin, praying he would defend me, but he lowered his head and stared at the floor. He said nothing. He let the words hang in the air like a sentence against me. Nyla nodded beside her mother, her lips pressed tightly together in agreement. I felt betrayed not only by my husband's silence, but by the family I had spent years trying to belong to. The service moved on around me, prayers rising from lips that did not know the torment inside me. I stood by the photograph of my baby, my body present, but my spirit sinking deeper into despair. I could not stop hearing Adra's voice. Her words looped in my mind, taunting me, blaming me, branding me unworthy. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear through the room and demand justice for the son I had loved with every part of me. But grief chained me. My throat burned with words I could not release. Tears blurred my vision, and I clutched the edge of the table to keep from collapsing. That was when I felt a small tug at my dress. I looked down and saw Elira, my 7-year-old niece, staring up at me with wide, uncertain eyes. She leaned closer and whispered, "Auntie, should I show the pastor what Grandma poured into baby Silas's bottle?" Her words hit me like lightning. I froze, every muscle locked. For a moment, I could not breathe. Around us, the room continued in solemn quiet, but those who stood close enough heard her tiny voice. A ripple moved through the crowd as gasps rose. Conversation stopped. Heads turned toward us, curiosity and suspicion flickering across faces. I gripped Elira's small hand, my heart pounding so hard I thought I might faint. "What did you say, sweetheart?" I asked, my voice barely steady. Elira looked at me with innocent honesty and repeated, "Should I show the pastor what Grandma poured into the bottle?" The silence that followed was heavier than any words. Eyes darted between me, Adra, and Elira. I turned my gaze slowly toward my mother-in-law. Adra's face, usually so composed and sure, tightened for a moment. Nyla stiffened beside her, as though bracing for impact. Corin's head snapped up, his expression a mixture of fear and disbelief. I felt the ground shift beneath me. My grief had been unbearable, but now something else surged inside me. Dread, suspicion, and a desperate need for truth. Had I been blind to something darker all along? Had the woman who claimed to pray for my son done something I could never have imagined? The memorial, which should have been a place of mourning and remembrance, suddenly transformed into a courtroom, and I, still raw with the pain of loss, found myself standing on the edge of a revelation that could destroy everything I thought I knew about my family. The moment Elira's words reached my ears, the air in the memorial hall shifted. It was as if every person in the room inhaled at once and forgot how to release their breath. My chest tightened. My knees threatened to buckle, and my mind raced through every memory of Adra hovering near Silas, every whispered comment, every moment I had dismissed as cruel but harmless. Now those moments returned, carrying the weight of accusation. Elira's small hand trembled in mine, but her eyes never left my face. She was frightened, yet her innocence gave her courage. Around us, people leaned forward, their whispers rising into a wave of speculation. I felt dozens of eyes pressing on me, waiting for me to act. I knelt so I was level with Elira, my voice shaking but steady enough to be heard. "Sweetheart, what did Grandma pour into Silas's bottle?" Her lips quivered. She glanced toward her mother, Nyla, who stiffened but did not move. Then she looked at Adra, who stood frozen, her hands clutching the arms of her chair. Adra's eyes narrowed, warning her granddaughter to stay silent, but Elira was a child who did not understand the power of fear in the way adults did. She whispered, clear enough for everyone nearby to hear. She said it was medicine to keep him pure from you. Gasps burst across the room. People shifted in their seats, turning toward Adra. The pastor, standing near the pulpit, froze with his Bible in hand, his expression caught between disbelief and horror. Corin's face drained of color. He looked from his mother to me, his jaw clenched, his body rigid. My heart pounded. I rose to my feet, still holding Elira's hand. The trembling in my body turned into a strange clarity. I faced Adra directly and asked, my voice louder now, "What did you put in my baby's bottle?" Adra's face hardened. Her composure returned and her voice rang out, sharp and commanding. I did nothing but pray for that child. This girl is confused. Children make up stories. But Elira tugged my hand and shook her head fiercely. I saw it. She poured something from a dark bottle. It smelled bad. I asked her why, and she said it would make Silas clean and strong. The room erupted in low murmurs. Some covered their mouths, others glared at Adra with suspicion. The pastor stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "Sister Adra, is this true?" Adra's eyes blazed. She lifted her chin and spoke with defiance. "I did what was necessary. Mara is weak. She was never meant to be a mother. God revealed that to me long ago. I gave Silas a remedy to protect him from her influence. If the child is gone, it is because God chose to take him, not because of me." Her words struck me like thunder. My knees weakened, but anger surged through me. 10 years of waiting, 1 year of joy, and now my baby was gone. And standing in front of me was a woman who dared to claim she knew better than God, better than me, the mother who had prayed and wept for that child. Tears blurred my vision, but I did not back down. I stepped closer, my voice breaking yet filled with fury. "You poisoned him, you stole him from me, and you dare to call it God's will." The room fell silent. For the first time, I saw fear flicker across Adra's face. Nyla rose to her feet, clutching her daughter's arm as if to pull her away, but the pastor raised his hand, stopping her. "This is not a matter to silence. A child has spoken the truth. If you interfered in God's gift, Sister Adra, then you must answer for it." Corin finally moved. His voice cracked as he turned to his mother. "Tell me she's lying. Tell me you didn't touch Silas's bottle." Adra's lips pressed together, her silence louder than any denial. Corin's shoulders slumped. He covered his face with his hands, shaking his head. For years he had avoided confronting his mother, choosing silence over conflict. But now his silence had cost him a son. I stood straighter, the trembling in my hands replaced by resolve. Grief still clawed at me, but anger burned hotter. I would no longer cower beneath Adra's authority or Nyla's quiet judgment. I would no longer wait for Corin to defend me. Silas was gone, but his short life demanded justice. I looked around the room, meeting the eyes of the people who had come to mourn. My son was not taken by God's will alone. He was taken because someone believed she had the right to play God with his life. I will not stay silent. I will not let his death be dismissed as fate. The pastor placed a hand on my shoulder, steadying me. His voice carried through the room. There must be an investigation. Truth cannot remain buried in whispers. If a child was harmed, we cannot leave this place without accountability. Adra's face twisted with rage. She shouted, "You are all blind!" I did what needed to be done. That child would have been ruined by her. I saved him from corruption, but no one supported her. Even Nyla pulled her daughter closer, as if ashamed of the mother she had once followed so loyally. The turning point had arrived. I was no longer just a grieving mother. I was a woman standing at the edge of truth, holding the hand of a child who had spoken with more courage than the adults around her. I had a choice: to retreat into silence and let Adra's cruelty win, or to demand justice for Silas and protect myself from the family that had tried to destroy me. I chose to fight. The memorial hall felt like it had shifted into another world. The pastor's words hung in the air, demanding truth, while the people gathered leaned closer, their whispers swelling like waves. My heart beat with furious rhythm, and grief twisted into something stronger than pain: resolve. I turned to Adra, my voice steady though my hands trembled. "You poisoned my son. You watched me cradle him. You watched me thank God for him. And still you believed you had the right to decide his fate. You robbed me of the only miracle I ever had, for the first time since I had known her." Adra faltered. Her composure cracked, her eyes darting to the faces around her, searching for an ally. But no one stepped forward. Every head turned away. Every whisper condemned her. Nyla pulled Elira closer and lowered her gaze, unwilling to meet her mother's eyes. The pastor's voice rang clear. "Sister Adra, this accusation cannot be ignored. Did you or did you not place something into this child's bottle?" Adra's lips tightened. For a moment it seemed she might deny everything, but then her shoulders straightened and her chin lifted high. Her voice rose, commanding, almost triumphant. "Yes, I did it. I poured a remedy of herbs and oils, a mixture passed down from my own mother. It was meant to protect him from weakness, to keep him pure. God guided my hand, gasps ripped through the crowd. People recoiled, their faces pale with horror. My knees buckled, but I held myself upright, feeding on the anger that burned through my veins. I stepped forward until I stood only feet from her. "You call that protection?" "You killed him. You poisoned him, and then dared to stand here and say God approved." Adra's eyes blazed, but her voice wavered under the weight of my words. "You are unfit, Mara." 10 years of barrenness was proof enough. You prayed, but your prayers were empty. It was my faith that brought Silas here. Without me, he would not have been born. I was chosen to keep him safe. Corin's voice cracked as he finally spoke. His hands shook at his sides. "Safe? You call this safe? He's dead because of you." His words echoed across the room, heavy with years of suppressed fear and loyalty finally breaking. He turned on his mother, his face etched with anguish. "I let you control me. I let you control her. But I will never forgive you for this. You killed my son." Adra's face drained of color. She stumbled back a step, clutching the side of the pew. For the first time, her authority slipped from her grasp. The room watched as the mighty matriarch unraveled. I seized the moment, my voice rising above the murmurs. "Silas was not yours to save or destroy. He was mine. God gave him to me, and you stole him. You cannot twist faith to justify your cruelty. You cannot call murder a blessing." The pastor moved closer, his expression grim. "What you have confessed is not faith. It is sin. It is arrogance. You placed yourself above God and above the bond between mother and child. This cannot be excused." Adra's breathing grew ragged. She turned to the crowd, desperation flickering across her face. "You know me. You know my prayers. You have come to me for blessings, for guidance. Will you now turn against me?" But no one answered. The silence of the hall was deafening. The very people who once admired her now looked away, unwilling to be associated with the evil that had just been revealed. Alera's small voice broke the silence. "Grandma, you said not to tell. You said no one would believe me." Her words rang like a bell, pure and unshakable. Adra's face crumpled. For a moment I saw not the cold, commanding woman who had tormented me for years, but a cornered figure stripped of power. She slumped into her seat, muttering under her breath, but no one leaned close enough to hear. I turned to Corin, searching his face. His eyes were red, his jaw clenched. He reached for my hand, but I pulled it away. "You stood by her for too long. You let her words cut me, and now they cut deeper, because they took Silas from me. I will never forgive her, but I do not know if I can forgive you." His face broke, but I could not soften. The truth had torn away every illusion I had clung to, and in its place stood the raw, undeniable fact that I had been fighting this battle alone all along. The pastor addressed the room. "This family has suffered a great loss, but we cannot leave this house without truth leading us forward. What has been spoken here must be reported. A child's life was taken not by God's will, but by human hands. Justice must follow." I felt a strange calm settle over me. The grief was still there, sharp and unforgiving, but it no longer chained me. I had spoken the truth, and the truth had been heard. Silas's short life had forced the darkness into the light. My arms were empty, but my voice was no longer silenced. As the service drew to a close, the crowd moved uneasily, whispering about what would come next. Adra sat alone, her once commanding presence shattered. Nyla clutched her daughter and avoided every gaze. Corin remained at my side, but I stepped away, unwilling to lean on him any longer. I stood before Silas's photograph one last time, tracing the frame with my fingertips. "You were my gift," I whispered, "and even in death you revealed the truth I needed to see." The climax had broken me open, but it had also set me free. When the memorial ended, the whispers of the congregation followed Adra as she left the hall. The woman who had spent her life commanding respect walked out with no one at her side. Her authority, her carefully built reputation, her false righteousness had all crumbled in a single afternoon. She had confessed to tampering with my son's bottle, and no amount of twisting her words could erase the truth. The pastor assured me he would take the matter to the proper authorities. He told me faith was never meant to be a weapon, and that what had happened to Silas would not be buried in silence. For the first time since his death, I felt that justice might come. It would not bring my baby back, but it would strip away the power of the woman who had tormented me and reveal her for what she truly was. Corin tried to reach for me as we walked home, his hand brushing against mine, but I could not bring myself to hold it. My heart still broke for the man I once believed would protect me. His silence through the years, his refusal to stand between me and his mother's cruelty, had left scars I could not ignore. He wept that night, whispering apologies I could not accept. Grief had already built a wall between us, and betrayal had made it stronger. Alira, though only 7 years old, had been the bravest voice in the room. She had spoken what others might have ignored. I knelt in front of her before she left with her mother and said, "You saved me today. You saved Silas's memory. Never forget that your voice matters, even when you are young." She smiled faintly, but her eyes carried the burden of what she had revealed. Children should not have to carry such truths, but her courage had broken open the lies that bound us. In the days that followed, I sat alone in Silas's nursery. I held his blanket, pressed it to my face, and cried until no more tears would come. Yet beneath the sorrow was a spark of something new, strength. My son had lived only a year, but his presence had changed everything. His short life had forced truth into the open. He had revealed the darkness in my home, and through him I had found my voice. I came to understand that sometimes God's answers are not the ones we want. I prayed for a child, and I was given one for only a short time. I begged for more years with him, but instead I was given truth. Silas's life was not wasted because it exposed the poison of control, pride, and cruelty. My son's memory became my reason to rise each morning, to stand tall, and to refuse silence ever again. My lesson was painful but clear. Family is not defined by blood alone. True family protects, nurtures, and loves without condition. Those who wound you, who use faith as a weapon, who steal joy in the name of righteousness, are not guardians of your soul. They are thieves of peace. And no matter who they are, mother, sister, or husband, you have the right to stand against them. Silas's absence will always ache, but I will carry him with me as a light that revealed the truth. His story will not be hidden. His life mattered, and through telling it, I honor him. Thank you for staying with me through this journey. If this story touched your heart, I ask you to share it with others. Leave a comment to let me know how it made you feel, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss another story. Your support keeps these stories alive, and together we can make sure that voices like mine and Silas's are never silenced.